previously on Stay in Your Lane.
Us exporting stuff is good because we made it and we're exporting it. But you also want to back out those imports, and that's the net exports. So that's going to be really big, a really big subtraction. So that's probably kind of baked, and you'll see that come out at the end of this month, the number, and it's likely to be negative. So
I'm going to stop you right there. I think fourth quarter, then to fourth quarter, we saw a lot of activity in the December time period after the election in November, and then we had a bunch in January and February. Everybody trying to get ahead of what they think is coming. So what you're saying, and then now there'll be a little lull from that.
yeah, so there was again, I'll show you this um, um, a big increase in imports to get in front of the tariffs. But now consumers, like I was just saying, are going, I don't need to spend any money right now. So we had the month of front running, and we may have some more of that coming up. But at some point, everybody's going to stop. We're actually, as see today, that we're running low on vehicle inventory for the first time in a long time.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'd love for you to share with us what you brought and tell
Yeah.
us what it means, because for most of us, we look at the overall economy. I don't think our industry is in a turnaround, but I think the administration is probably a friend more so to our industry than the previous administration.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you have to have something to pull around, right? You got to have something to put in the trailer.
Right, right. And I can certainly understand that in your industry or your associated industries, that tariffs can be very popular. And they are good for the industries that are protected. There's no two ways about that. But
Okay.
what I'm going to show you is, if you're not in the protected industries, then it doesn't work so well. It can kind of work against you. In fact, if you think of manufacturing employment is 8% of total employment in this country. It's only 8%. 70% of the economy is
Services.
consumers. So, there's a balance there that has to be thought about. Um, and let me walk through this and we can see a little bit more of it. So I'm going to bring up this presentation here I have. Tariffs can damage economies. A trade war can cause inflation and job losses. I'm presuming you can see this now, John. Yeah?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep. And I saw inflation actually dropped on the last report.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
It did. But again, this is a question of when have these effects kicked in. And April 2nd was the Liberation Day, and then it was reversed a few days later. So I don't think we've had the full chance to see all these effects.
Okay.
But the thing with tariffs is it creates a small amount of winners and more losers. And I'll show you some more examples of that. Tariffs on imports hurt U.S. customers and businesses, and the inevitable retaliatory tariffs hurt U.S. exporters and businesses. But they can provide leverage for negotiations. And that's really a strong reason that this administration has tariffs in place. It has tariffs in place and has been sort of badgering Canada. And I do want to note some things about Canada. It's the world's 10th largest economy. It has the world's third largest oil reserves. It's the second largest importer into the US, and it's the largest market for US exports. So that's a really important trading partner for us. And I would think that as an important trading partner, we would want to make sure it stays economically healthy. So targeting Canada and Mexico maybe needs to be thought out a little more carefully as well. So let me look at some more of the pros and cons here. Here's arguments for the tariffs, and I'll be talking about steel and aluminum producers. This is an example. creates jobs for producers, destroys jobs for users of steel and aluminum. Increases profits for steel and aluminum producers, decreases profits for the users.
Okay.
Tariffs hurt businesses and consumers. Retaliatory tariffs hurt exporters and business. They're good for leverage and trade negotiations. They're good for national security, but they risk this dangerous trade war where everybody loses. And there's some other considerations. As I said, we'll see winners and losers, and tariffs can backfire. Back in 2016, the EU had tariffs on motorcycles, and the US had tariffs on incoming steel and aluminum. So Harley Davidson, the most American of all brands, is sitting here saying, geez, my input costs just went up 25%. And now there are tariffs on the bikes I'm trying to sell into the European Union from the US. I'm getting hit with tariffs from both sides. What do? I leave. I take my production to Thailand. I didn't take it all, but the bikes they wanted to sell into the EU, imagine Harley Davidson moving from Milwaukee or the US. Well, that's what happened. So instead of bringing jobs in, that tariffs can send jobs out as well. Another example of tariffs backfiring, there might be tariffs on EU wine. Well, that's going to make U.S. winemakers more competitive. I mean, that's part of the plan, right?
Okay.
But them being more competitive, they'll be able to produce as much wine as possible now because you won't have to compete with Spanish or French wine. And they're going to crank out as much as possible, and it'll get more expensive and of lower quality. So, this hits consumers, and it hits them on both ways: quality, price, and lack of choice. It's a backfire. And then one other consideration is protections against IP theft are really important. If they can be done by tariffs or any other means, our intellectual property has been given away for decades. It used to be that in businesses, American companies wanted to go into China. China would say, great, love to have you. The price is your technology. You've got to give us your technology. And that's been really, I think, damaging to our economy.
Yeah, normally they steal it then.
Yeah. So let me see if I can blow through this a little bit more rapidly here. I've been talking a lot. Now, this again goes back to 2016 when tariffs were going on in steel and aluminum. Well, it was actually 17 and 18. But in any event, this map on the left shows the density by county of steel and aluminum producing industries. And the darker the area, the more companies, the more steel and aluminum producing industries. The chart on the right shows county employment of steel and aluminum using industries. So the tariffs protect this group of employment at the expense of this one. That's why I say they're more losers than winners. And this, I think, demonstrates it fairly clearly. If you're going to protect steel and aluminum producers, you're going to hurt everybody that uses it, like Boeing or, cars, motorcycles, washing machines, appliances, all these guys are going to be suffering because steel and aluminum is being protected. Now, this has been tried before. So in 2002, President Bush imposed these steel tariffs. It did create 3,500 jobs, but it destroyed 200,000 others. So that's what I mean by creating, winners and losers. And in terms of whether trade destroyed jobs or not, got an interesting chart here. this chart on the left, the dark line, shows the actual number of jobs in manufacturing. So here it's plotted against the left. It's actually 20 million at manufacturing jobs. This goes all the way back to World War II. And so manufacturing jobs peaked in the 70s and then went down. Well, when NAFTA went into place, a lot of people were saying, oh, that's the end of US manufacturing. Well, partially right. But in the 3 years after NAFTA, 4 years after NAFTA, US jobs were actually created. And then China came into the WTO and put pressure on American jobs. There's no question, really, that jobs did go to Mexico and China, but they were also lost during recessions here and in here. I mean, you can see how many jobs were lost. Since the Great Recession, gosh, we've created 1.3 million jobs. So it is true that trade deals, dealing with countries where labor costs are basically zero, did destroy jobs, but it's not the whole story. Another part of the story is the blue line, and that's manufacturing jobs as a percentage of all jobs. And back at the end of World War II, that was something like almost 40%. And it's been on a steady decline ever since then to where it's about 8% now. That line looks the same for virtually every developed economy because every developed economy started moving towards the services sector. So instead of services being something like 60% of the economy in World War II, it's now 85% of the economy. So, we are moving into and have been moving into a services economy, which are more highly value added. So that's why we've had really a successful, prosperous economy. But that's part of the reason that manufacturing jobs have disappeared. And after all, there's always going to be somebody that can make a broom cheaper than us. China's finding that out now too, because Vietnam, Thailand, are making brooms cheaper than they can. But let me get back to this point. Manufacturing is 8% of all jobs, and that's really where the tariffs are pointed. But okay. Consumers are 70% of all economic activity. So as a policy, I think we need to think about what the effect of the tariffs, and we see potential for job loss, and we also see potential for inflation. That's the big problems with tariffs: job loss and inflation.
Continue watching on the next episode of the Stay in Your Lane podcast.